Yo, hello, welcome to my journey. Today we continue with the company test. Vô làm nha. So, oh no. Not the rising. So this isn't okay. So then gotta know what I gotta do first. I'm going to implement this feature first, add and delete book so that we can add other book inside, and then we can display it. So I'm gonna implement this one first, and the others we will go to it later. First we have to implement this, right? We need something to store the book data so that we can add or delete book. So we're gonna use Firestore or something, and let's see how to implement that.
Giới thiệu 7 ấp phiên bản mùa hè mới, thanh mát vị chanh, nổ bùng sảng khoái.
On maybe front end, I realized that sometimes it is pretty hard for a front end developer to create a portfolio or create projects because they need an API to consume, right? And since they're front end developers, they shouldn't be worrying about creating their own API. And this is where Firebase comes in. Firebase is a platform provided by Google, and it allows people to create like APIs or create a backend very easily. You don't need to have any prior knowledge to backend or to how requests works. It is pretty simple to set up, and you can do a lot of stuff. You can work with databases. You can work with real-time data. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Firebase. And in this video, what I'm going to be teaching you guys is how you can set up Firebase in a React app, and also npm is just npm and install Firebase, and this Firebase like this. And if you're using npm, it's just npm install Firebase, and this will
Okay. So we'll be using npm install Firebase.
all of the stuff that we need for, and all of them can go to trash. Then I'll come to the index.js, and since we just deleted the index.css file, and I'll delete this over here and everything inside of it because we're gonna start from scratch, like this. And I won't be caring that much about CSS in this video at all, actually, because this is not the focus of the video. So this video, start from scratch. Delete this import, or else it will cause us some errors. And I'll come to our app.
So let's go ahead to FC first. It's okay.
CSS file, I'll delete this import, or else it will cause us some errors. And I'll come to our app.js, and I'll delete this over here and everything inside of it because we're going to start from all actually focus of the video. So calling the service Firebase, you click over, you just come to this website, click on get started, and it should project. You give it a name.
First we need to do this. Easy. Cataract.
Just call it continue. then it will ask us for analytics. I would just leave it how it is. I'll just click on continue. I wouldn't care that much about that. Then you can select a Google Analytics account. I'm just gonna click the default account for Firebase and click on create project. It's going to start creating your Firebase project, and with this you will be able to do everything related to Firebase, including working with the database, including working with all of the different services that Firebase provides for you. And when this finishes setting up, we can click on continue, and you'll see that it will open up this page over here, which is basically the dashboard for this Firebase project. It includes everything you might want to know, as you can see over here. Maybe if you want to host a project, if you want to do something related to machine learning, if you want to do real-time databases, authentication, all the kind of stuff Firebase provides to you. So what we want to do right now is we want to connect this project to our React application, which, by the way, the Firebase dependency just installed. And how do we do this? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to click over here on this button and go to project settings. Then this over here will open up, and down here at the bottom we should see this button, and we can click on it and it will say register our app. We need to register our app because it's basically we're registering to Firebase so that it knows that we're actually adding to create our tutorial. And I don't want hosting. I'll just click register app, and you should see that it should start registering. While that is happening, I'm going to come to our Visual Studio Code, and one thing that is default in many Firebase projects is we need to create a file in our source folder for creating the connection to our Firebase like our Firebase project that we just created in the website. To call it Firebase config, just to represent that it is a configuration file, and we'll put over here
Firebase
related to connecting, and it tells us to install Firebase, which it did. But one thing that is extremely important is it gives us all of this over here. And what exactly is this? Well, this is all the configuration information, like the API key, the project ID, all this kind of stuff related to the project in this website. Now, you shouldn't put the same as mine. And I know this, my information is appearing on the video, but I will delete this project immediately after the video. I don't care that much if you see the information. But basically what we do, and just paste it. And this information, initialize app import over here and put it at the top. So what is initialize app? Well, if we want to get anything from Firebase, we need to say import, then open and close curly braces and get the information from Firebase/app. And the initialize app is basically the function we call which creates the connect. So if we set it equal to initialize app and we pass in the Firebase config, and now we actually established a connection. But one thing we need to take into account is that this doesn't guarantee a database. It doesn't guarantee, for example, that we have a database. To create database, and here Firestart, and then we'll open up this. This doesn't guarantee a database. It doesn't guarantee, for example, that we have a Firestart database. In order to do that, we need to actually create our Firestart database. So we just this button over here, Firestart, and then we'll open up this. We go to create database, and you should see that many things appear. I would recommend just starting already in production mode, which doesn't really matter. So we just click on next, and it will ask us for a location of where our database should be hosted. And what it means is if most of your users, which in our case doesn't matter because it's just an example project, but if most of your users exist in Asia, you should choose the Asian location. But in my case, I'll put US Central because it's closer to where I am. So I'll click enable, and when you click enable, it should start creating an instance of the database in the
Dom name Dom name. Where's this? Sorry, Dom name service.
As you can see over here, one thing we want to do is we're going to come to rules over here real quick. And what it means for rules is basically it determines what can happen in this database, from a connection. So what I mean by that is, for example, we can technically create this database, but only allow people to read from the database. So only allow people to get information from the database. But if in our case we want to be able to add stuff to the tables, to the database, and read stuff from the database. So what we do here, and all the things we need to, literally what we need to change, is we just need to make this true, because it basically says, if true, which is a statement that will always be true, we want to allow to read and write. So basically, we're just saying that we want to allow ourselves to read and write to this database. Now you can add more conditions to this. You can make it so that only if the user is authenticated, that kind of stuff. But what we want to do for now is just leave it like this, and I'm going to click on publish so that the changes actually work. Then we'll come over here to data, and this is where we start creating our actual database, like the structure of our database. So, similar to some SQL, you can't just write. What happens is you have collections, and I would consider collections similar to tables, right? Information about users. So for our project, just for the
Okay, so we have Google store data using file store, and we have to start these things. The book.
So we're going to be creating a collection of users where each user has a name, an age, and whatever we want to add for each user. So technically, we just give it a name like users, we click next, and then it's going to ask for a document ID. So what does it mean by a document? Well, if a collection in Firestore is like the table in an SQL database, a document is like one of the entries. So a collection will include multiple documents, and each document is a new user. It's almost like it's just the new, the new thing, right? The new addition to the database. Every time you want to add something to this user's collection, you're going to add a document, and it's going to ask for an ID, an auto-generated ID, because this is how the IDs will exist inside of our table or our collection. And then we can add some certain fields, right? I'm just gonna add an example field just so that called an age, a point, a timestamp. User will have a name and a map, and there's many different types that you can. The age 20.
Okay, I'm gonna add like this. First, we're gonna be the name. Order, should have that age, 1 out. And the out from there. Mapping is drop back. Flip it. Application, yes.
my age. The timestamp, each user will have an. You see that instead of it, there's name based out of our React tab. So the way we connect it is pretty simple. We create a variable called db and set it equal to get Firestore. And Firestore is something that we haven't imported yet, so we do need to import that at the top over here. And we just import this from the @Firebase, like this, Firebase / Firestore, like this. And then we just get the get Firestore function. And this is how we connect it. Basically, we just pass the app inside of this, and it's going to populate this db variable over here with all of the Firestore information from this app. And the important is we need to access this db variable outside of this file so that we make the queries, we add stuff to the database. So
Firestore app, okay. Initial app, Firebase conflict, and then we get the Firestore. Initial app by API key automatic, and then we get Firestore while it's connected.
we're going to export this so that we can get this variable in another file. And now we have this set up, we can actually close the Firebase config.js because it is pretty much done. But there's a caveat that I want to mention in each variable. I would actually recommend you them instead if you your API.
The great thing about Turing is you get a chance to work with the best Silicon Valley companies from the comfort of your home.
Our app now that we have all of the connections. So with that, well, and this are open up my website. So I'm gonna first and run npm start, and it should open, and it should be just since it's gonna be an array, just a function inside of. We should test to see if this is actually working by writing console log data like this. And when we write this, we can come over here to our project and let's inspect element to see if it's actually working. If we open up our console,
okay, I think that's enough. Let's see some. Let me go to GitHub and see some React. How they structure it here. yes. That's how we use those, right? Đấy. Good. What to do? Okay.
A style sheet, which is what ultimately we're going to do. I'm going to use something like Style Components, which is an external package that is really popular. You can also use that. So this H1, let's say color, and we would set a line like this. And when you use style, you want to use double value. Say background color, going to be camel case. Put in and set that, and then just grab here and pass in our heading style, and that's going to do the same thing. All right, I'm not going to be using this except where we'll keep this down here just to, so this index style sheet, this whole thing.
So you want to be a software engineer at Google? Go to algoexpert.io. Pick a question, read the prompt.
Through it real quick. It's pretty simple. We're using the Poppins font. The border header is going to contain real repository in the description. So just grab the styling, and I'll go through it real quick. It's pretty simple. We're using the
going to do.
Poppins font. A list of events will be styled. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and it's going to look like this. Let me just make this a little wider. Look at that. All right, so we'll close that up, and we shouldn't have to touch the index CSS anymore. Now, the next thing that I'd like to do here is add a button. And this is going to say add for now. Add a clap box and align it side by side. And then I also, whoops, that should be class name. We want to use it instead of my CSS on toggle. One down, math, we'll say math dot, what we want to use for this. But I just want to first show you how we can map through the event. I wanted to change, see it, map out a function here, and we don't need this. So I'm actually going to copy, or not copy, but cut this out of here, and we're just going to return this button directly. And then in our header, we're going to bring that button component in. In components called button.js, and we're going to just map out a function here, and we don't need this. So I'm actually going to copy, or not copy, but cut this out of here, and we're just going to return this button directly. And then in our header, we're going to bring that button component in. So it's in the same folder, so just /button, and then we'll put that here. And we're going to see the same result. Now, I want to be able to take in a couple props into this button. So one will be color. So we'll pass in a color of, let's say, green. We'll have text. Let's say add. Actually, let's change it just so we can make sure that we're actually seeing that. So we're passing in a green and text prop into button. So remember, we catch props here. We could just use green and text prop. So remember, we catch props here. We could just use props and use it as an object, but I'm going to destructure that object. So we're passing in a green and text prop into button. So remember, we catch props here. We could just use props and use it as an object, but I'm going to destructure that object and take color and text. And let's add right here, instead of the static add text, we'll add our prop. And then for the color, we'll go ahead and add style and set that to, let's use double curly braces here. And we're going to actually set the background color. So background color is going to be set to color. So we'll save that. And now we have a green button that's below. So if we wanted to add other buttons, you know, we could copy this down, and this one here, this one here, we could say hello 1, this one hello 3, and we could change colors, blue, red. So this is change here. So background color is going to be set to color. So we'll save.
Too focused on it.
Now we have a green button that says hello. So if we wanted to one button dot, use me for a long time. So we have our text, which is going to be prop types dot string. Then we have the that now. So I'll create that function. So const on click, and we could do a console log and just say click. So if I go over here, if I click, you can see it's going to log that down here. You can also pass in the event object. So if you want to get, you know, the position of the element that's clicked or whatever, there's a lot of things you can access with that. But since this is a component, it's not always going to have the same click, right? So in here, put this to a function here called onClick in our header. Put click. Now, a click is going to have this the element that's clicked or whatever. There's a lot of things you can access with that. But since this is a component, it's not always going to have the same click. So what we'll do is we'll have, let's say, do a function here called onClick in our header. So const onClick. This isn't going to stay. I'm just putting it here for now. And we'll say console log click. All right. Now this is getting in as a prop. So in our button, we have to catch it here, just like we did with the other ones. And we can get rid of this because what's going to happen is this will call this on click and it'll get sent up to the header or wherever you embed this button. Now down here in the prop types, we could add, what's going to happen is this will call this on click and it'll get sent up to this because just like we did with the other ones. And we can get rid of this because what's going to happen is this will call this on click and it'll get sent up to the header or wherever you embed this button. Now down here in the prop types, we could add on click, say we want that as a prop types dot func because it's a function, and we could say it is required because you're most likely going to want a button to click.
Bỏ vô đây, bấm vô
We want that as. Now if I go and
hết đời được em được cái button vô em đưa mình cái ông thích nó cho không cái nó nghe sự kiện bấm vô xong nó sẽ chuyển sự kiện này qua cái button như này.
Let's just reload that and click add. We see click. The on click prop, just call this function. embedded this button component and we had the onClick prop just call this function here. Now we're gonna, later on, this is gonna talk, okay, because we embedded this button component and we had the onClick prop just call this function here. Now we're gonna, later on, this is gonna toggle the form, but we're not gonna do that just yet. I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of how events work. I could have made it on double click, on submit. There's a whole bunch of different events that you can add. Now I want to start to talk.
There's the on-click drop. Let's go to cons functions.
About state and .js. This is, we can get rid of this. And for now, I'm just going to create a variable called tasks up here and set that to an array. And I'm just going to paste in 3 different tasks. They're just objects with an ID, text, day, and a reminder, which is just a Boolean value. All right, now, ultimately, this is not the way that we want to do this. We want the task to be part of our state. So I'll show you how to integrate that into our component in a minute, but I just want to first show you how we can map through these or loop through these tasks. Minute, part of our state. Text, day, and a reminder, which is just a Boolean value. All right, now, ultimately, this is not the way that we want to do this. We want the task to be part of our state. So I'll show you how to integrate that into our component in a minute, but I just want to first show you how we can map through these or loop through these tasks and output something based on. Each one. So we do that by creating what's called a list.
That's my React. Create a list by using the map array method, which is just map in here. And then I'm going to open some curly braces and take my tasks, and we want to do .map to create a list. Now map takes in a function, so I'm going to use an arrow function, and I'm going to set this just to some parentheses with some JSX inside. Now for each task, I'll call it task. And then in here, let's just, for now, we'll put an H1. Let's do like an H3. And let's say we want the task dot, is it text? Yeah, so we'll just get the text for each one and output that. All right.
save that, nothing shows because we haven't brought in the task component yet. So let's go up here into app.js. And let's then go under the header here and say tasks. All right, so we'll save that, and notice that it's showing an H3 of each of the task text. Okay, so in addition to that, we have a warning that says each child in
Oh shit. Well, oops. Did it do the oops right? Oh shit, we have to grab it. Oh, this doesn't work. It's showing in the list should have a unique key prop.
list should have a unique key prop. So when we use .map in here and we output JSX, that's called a list. So the parent of the list, which in this case is an H3, should have a key prop, and that should be something unique. So we'll use the task.id.
Okay. Thank you guys. See you next time then. I have to eat. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.